Welcome, everybody, to the Beyond Red and Blue podcast. I'm your host, Beau Richards, and with me is my co-host, Dan Humphrey.
Greetings and salutations.
It is the 13th episode. We have a very special guest today. He's one of my favorite people in the whole world. He's one of the first people I ever met when I started jiu-jitsu, and he kicked the shit out of me. And I kept coming back for more, and it's been 4.5 years, and we're still friends. It is Shawn Carter. Say hello, Shawn.
Hello, hello.
So I thought about exactly what all I wanted to say to introduce you, and I figured that the best way to introduce you is to just briefly to explain how the first time I ever met you, you triangle choked me for an hour straight with like you didn't have a grin on your face, you had like a scowl. You were like, I thought you were like, and I think
just
deep
means
down
he was
you
having
were,
a good time.
yeah, I think deep down you were enjoying it, but I just thought you were like this really angry middle-aged gentleman who didn't like me. And then I found out like 2 years later that, if I remember correctly, you had said you had a hard time triangling me because my shoulders were big and you have short legs. And so you were focusing on trying to make the triangle work.
Yeah.
And it was just miserable for me because I didn't know any better.
Oh, poor guy. No, I kind of feel bad for you because it definitely, I remember you being like this like football player looking dude coming in.
I was very tough.
I mean, you were a big dude, and you came in, and Brian at the time, he liked matching me up with whoever the new guy was, because if they spazzed out, like it'd be okay,
That's
so
my
we
job.
didn't know. Yeah, exactly. So we didn't know what type of guy you were at the time. And also kind of a little bit of extra info on that story is that my triangles kind of sucked at the time. So like when you go into more like old school gyms, they'll be like, oh, you have too much shoulder in that triangle. Well, I didn't know what that meant, right? And so like some days it's like, you would get it and it feels great, and then other days you would be so confused and wouldn't have very specific goals in mind to actually get the triangle done, like keeping your whole shin bone above the shoulder line. So I didn't understand why it was so. I mean, I knew your arms were big and you had big shoulders and everything else, but I didn't know why the hell it just wasn't working the way it normally does, and it frustrated the hell out of me. So the frustration wasn't necessarily with you. It was just like, okay, this guy's like first day and I can't throw a triangle on him. Like, I suck. So that's really probably where that came from a bit.
And I was scared of you for like 2 years because of that.
That's terrible.
Hell, was first impression.
Yeah, I was like, he is angry if he's going to beat me up every time I see him.
No.
Actually, it wasn't quite that long. It was right after I got my blue belt. And then we started hanging out more and drilling leg locks. And I was like, okay, he's nice.
Yeah. No, I mean, I hope it turned into a good experience at some point,
Oh yeah, no, I love it. I just remember it was really funny because I was, I was a thick, like I said, I was top heavy, and we were talking before we started the podcast. But I'm like $159 now. Then I was like 183.
Yeah,
I think when I started 186 maybe, and I had consciously put on, like I was trying to put on weight and put on muscle, and I'd done a really good job for a couple of years doing that. So I was pretty thick up top, and like none of my shirts fit. And I think I have the same shirts now and they all fit, so that's good. But yeah, I just remember like you were so small, and you just like fucked me up, and like I couldn't breathe every time it was like immediate. Like every time you locked it on, it was like I just had no air. I just like nothing. I was just like gone. And you just kept doing it over and over because that was the whole point. And you were scowling. So I just thought you were doing it because you didn't like new people, or you didn't like me, or like maybe I like smelled bad. Like I didn't know. And I was like, why did the gym owner like put me up with the really mean tiny guy?
Welcome to jiu-jitsu.
Right, exactly. It really did kind of hook me though too. It was because I went home, I was a little frustrated. I was like, I feel like I should have, not necessarily with that, but more so like all the movements and stuff. I was like, I should have been able to do this a lot better. And I kept going back, and then here we are.
That's awesome.
But that I figured that'd be a good intro to any of the listeners to who Shawn is.
You're famous by now, Shawn. He's been telling that story every other podcast.
Yeah, is that right?
It's my favorite jiu-jitsu story.
Well, I think that I think that a lot of us have a similar story like that,
Yeah.
where, we walk in, we think whether we've watched movies or we had some kind of previous training, even if you're a wrestler and, you grappled or you did something and you walk in the gym and just somebody just smashes your ego like right away, and
Yeah.
you realize like how real it actually is, and like with all of everything that you have, there's nothing that you can give, like there's like you have nothing,
Yeah.
and to know that they're just playing with you, it's a rough experience, but man, it's like
Yeah.
it's one of those things. It's like it's like quicksand. Like the more you struggle your first day, the more you resist it, like the worse it gets, because the senior, whoever you're with, I mean, they're just gonna smash you and make you act accordingly, right?
Yep.
Or I mean, if you're spazzing out, which I was one of them, right?
Sure.
So it's like, you're trying to actually fight out of it, try to stand up, it's like it's terrible,
Yeah.
but it's great
So
at the same time.
let's use that as a good segue. Shawn, if you can give us your origin story, as it were, what got you into jiu-jitsu?
Whew, okay.
Also,
sh-
when did you start jujitsu?
So I started jujitsu 2012.
Okay.
So it was actually beginning of March 2012. So the beginning of my jujitsu journey, just like everybody else's, is a life type of journey, right? So I was exposed to some stuff that made me feel extremely vulnerable earlier on in life, and uh, I was scared in different situations when conflicts would arise. I froze up during like melee situations, and my friends depended on me, and I totally froze, and like I didn't even know how to act. I had nothing to give. Like even if a guy was like down, like I had nothing to give. And so I was at this party back in 2011, and I drank way too much. It was a UFC fight night at one of my buddies' houses or whatever, and somebody was talking about my friend's wife or whatever, and just kind of got going. And at the time, we were drinking Spody all day, so it was one of those days. All right, so then the fights get on, and everybody's getting riled up, and so anyways, long story short, I knocked the guy's hat off, and you know, I thought I was just tipping it, but it ended up like flying up on the roof, and I started laughing about it. He tackles me, and I didn't know jujitsu. I didn't know any type of grappling, but somehow I got threaded between his legs and ended up on his back. And I just knew that if you put a body triangle on somebody and sunk in the rear naked, like that would be good. So that's what ended up happening. And I was kind of in this weird phase where I was super drunk and emotional, lots of adrenaline. And at the same time, I didn't want to be this guy that was like really violent.
Mhm.
So I got all emotional about it. It was terrible showing of myself. Then I got to go to my sister's college graduation the very next day and take family photos, and had like a bloody head. The guy tried to bite off my finger, and I'm like,
Jesus.
yeah, it was like the worst case scenario. But anyways, it bugged me so much for months that it was so hard to choke this guy. I was like, it is not this hard. And so combined with like fear and like just this feeling of like not knowing what I was doing, not being educated, I guess. Like just it bugged the shit out of me. So there was a place. It was a Taekwondo school. They did Krav Maga. They did which is kind of a weird one, very debatable. But they also did jujitsu. And the jujitsu guy there, he was only a blue belt, no stripe blue belt. And I walked in, didn't even roll with him, just like did technique. There's like these nerdy, like 15-year-old kids, like really nerdy, like they had nothing, I mean, they're just kids. And they're one stripe white belt. So I was like, oh my gosh, these kids are about to get smashed. And it was like, oh no, armbar, choke, 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 triangle, armbar, armbar. And I was like so amazed. I was like, oh my gosh, like I haven't even rolled with a blue belt yet. I was like, these are white belts and they're just destroying me. And I'm like trying as hard as I can. So I was like, all right, gotta learn this. So that was like the start of it. Then I kind of wanted to explore more because they only were on for like two days a week. And so I wanted to learn more. So I started going to an MMA gym in Tukwila called Ring Demon. And Ring
Oh,
Demon
yeah.
is Dan knows. Yeah. So Ring Demon is like a whole different animal. Okay, so like Ring Demon is like so Eric Dahlberg is like the head coach there. He is amazing. He's a genius. Like
Real quick. Eric and I were white belts together back with Marcelo Alonso.
Okay, that's crazy.
All right, go ahead.
That's crazy. So this guy, like every time I talk to him, it's like you're talking to like somebody just ready to drop knowledge on you, you know, that in every aspect, you know, pro boxer, pro kickboxer, pro grappler, you know, you name it, right? So had a lot of good experiences there. My girlfriend at the time, she lived in Bothell, and basically I wanted to train up there. Found Brian's place. It was like self-defense. I was like, oh, cool. And I walk in, and at the time, my main place was still this place out in Burien, and the highest ranked person was a blue belt. Well, when I walked into Brian's, like there was at the time there's like 30 adults, and probably 3/4 of them were blue belts. This was when the school was much bigger.
Yeah.
And there was monsters in there, and I just shit my pants, pretty much. But yeah, I mean, after that, some things happened where Brian taught the S mount armbar, and Brian was a brown belt at the time. He had just got his brown belt, and and so he taught the S mount armbar. I actually came back to my gym, and in rolling, we used to kind of like it. It was like everybody would kind of sit around and watch each other grapple. It was a very weird dynamic, and there wasn't a lot of people. Well, I S mount armbarred somebody, and somebody asked me how it was done, and I told them, right? And that led to I was cross training, and then the owner of the gym actually wrote a formal letter, not the blue belt guy, this other lady wrote a formal letter saying basically if you train with us, like you're one of ours, you're not allowed to cross train, and basically said, you know, it's either us or, you know, the highway. So I chose the highway. I was like, my goals are much bigger than these four walls, you know, and that was kind of one of those things that I kept with me forever after that moment, is that whatever I do, I want it bigger than these four walls.
Yeah.
So that actually opened me up to actually cross training more, learning more about other people, being more open-minded to technique, to whatever it might be, people, whatever it is. I didn't want to be that.
Yeah.
So I ended up actually moving to Bothell with my girlfriend and started full-time training with Brian and all the squad out there. The rest is history.
Yeah.
Bam. Very cool. Dude, that's funny that people are still having that attitude of, you know, if you're with us, it's only with us. That's ridiculous. You made the right choice, in my opinion.
Thank you.
Yeah. You're actually the only person I've ever personally met who's had that problem.
Well, at least nowadays, like
I've never met anyone else who was like, or like the gym owner's like, get the fuck out if you're going to train somewhere else.
Well, that was super common for like old school martial arts.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah. But to hear that recently, that's whatever.
I also, a lot of the people that I see though, that I've trained with outside of our gym, outside of Brian's gym, has been because of you, Shawn. And so I think part of the reason I've never seen anyone who's had that attitude is because you tend to go to gyms where they don't care. Otherwise they probably get angry. So like I'm dealing with like people, right?
Yeah.
But it's interesting that that's still a thing. I don't get the dynamic. I don't understand why that would be such a problem for people. Like,
so like there's like livelihoods at stake here, right?
Sure.
When we're talking about gym owners and and different things and following like a certain criteria to make money. Okay. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to take that away from anybody. That's how they support their family. Okay. But Dan, you're spot on. She was an old school type of Taekwondo head. You know, she didn't know anything outside of it. And, you know, I don't even know if the jiu-jitsu guys even go there anymore, because jiu-jitsu people tend to, you know, kind of like after a certain point, they kind of just go with the flow. A lot of them.
Yeah.
Anyways.
So was that mainly
cool people?
Was that mainly like a Taekwondo school, and then just somebody who knew jiu-jitsu was doing a couple classes kind of thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So he was also the Krav Maga guy. That was the jiu-jitsu guy. Okay. And he was really into it because he was like a tactical, like firearms at all times, and, you know, type of guy. And, you know, he ran us through some really cool scenarios that I actually really enjoyed. His name's DJ Grand, super cool guy. Shout out DJ. But yeah, the owner of that school sucked. I don't know how else to put it. Like, yeah, he was a black belt in Taekwondo. He did all this stuff. He did all the training. Like, he knew like where he was at, and didn't bullshit about it. And she did, definitely. So, yeah, that's all I got.
So this actually brings me, explain to me your philosophy of jiu-jitsu.
In what aspect?
However you want. Like, what is it about? It's a big question.
Yeah.
But I think it kind of dovetails into what you had said, at least from what I, as well as I know you, about not allowing the four walls to keep you in and wanting to kind of learn and grow more. It seems to me that your philosophy would kind of dovetail into that, but I'm curious to kind of hear in your own words, like, what is it about jiu-jitsu, I guess, that that drives you? Like, why jiu-jitsu and not something else? Why do you keep doing it?
So there's quite a few different things that really interest me as much as it interests you guys. I think that we can all agree that there is a lot to be said about old school jiu-jitsu, grappling, like the smash type of style. There is something to that you can see it, but until you feel it, you don't know what the fuck that is, right? So, but there's also kind of like this race war going on for like the cleanest technique, right? The most, how to make your basics so incredibly perfect, and what exactly are those basics, and reforming how to actually look at it as a whole. And that's extremely interesting to me. So where the sport has been, where the focus of self-defense has been, where the two meet in between, it's changing much more than I ever thought that it would.
What's the most dramatic change that you've noticed?
Okay, so the leg lock thing was like 5 years ago, right? That was a pretty big thing. The big thing right now that I noticed was actually, not to fanboy on Danaher so much, but I mean, the guy is like an evil genius, right? So, but he, I think on purpose, is also neglecting a certain part to keep people out of certain areas. We'll get into that probably, but anyways, watching his Feet to Floor series, there's 2 videos at the end that are on self-defense specifically. Now, in self-defense, traditionally, there's like 36 moves that you learn throughout your jiu-jitsu career. They get better and better as you go, like cross-collar chokes and, punch block series and different things, right? But those moves, they're kind of like you just keep on doing the same thing kind of over and over and over again as you get better in grappling. And then you showcase those moves to get your belts. What he showed was basically a shotgun blast to my face, and he was like, okay. And this was kind of like what I saw is that my fear is that I teach somebody something, or let's say that I have 3 classes to teach somebody, and I know that, whatever type of class it is, I'm afraid that they're going to go out and they have this idea in their head that they even have a concept of how to fight or how to protect themselves, and they just get annihilated, or they have there's a difference in where their reality is, right? And what they have is not very effective. Well, what he showed was basically, if you get above the shoulder line and you're standing and they're grounded, it doesn't take a wizard to smash the other person, being as violent as possible in between stomp kicks, right? Soccer kicks and clinch knees, right? Which was a huge thing. And he shows systematically actually how to go and actually pass the guard, smashing people's face. If they cover their face with their hands, that you're supposed to use stomp kicks because they don't use velocity, and you're actually banging their head off of the back of their head to the floor. And then when they stop covering up because they're trying to get up, that's when you start soccer kicks, right? Now, he goes on to say that like these are the most violent things, which is extremely true. And I've had this like ongoing kind of conversation with myself in my head since I've seen it. It's like, okay, so if I now that I do know that, okay, because that was kind of one of those things in my head, like, okay, so let's say it's a situation where there's a bunch of people and I don't want to go to the ground. Like, okay, so do I double leg them? Do I choke them? Do I do this? What am I supposed to do? It's like this ongoing question in my head, and it's like it just answered it. Like when you see it, you can't unsee it. So now, like I have this problem where I'm thinking about, like, do I show this, and then they might have the potential to actually kill somebody,
Yeah.
right? And maybe I'm teaching somebody who's not a good person, right? You know, because that does happen, especially with people that are new. Like, when do you incorporate this? You know, so that's kind of a new question that I've been thinking about a lot. So
I would say, just thinking out loud, because that's a super valid question. Um, After, say, 6 months of rolling with somebody, like if you're training this person on a regular basis, you're gonna know them. You know, like we know each other in a way that people that are really close to us probably don't.
Yep.
Right? If you roll with somebody on a consistent basis, you get to know their character pretty well. So I would venture to say, after 6 months, if somebody keeps showing up and they're training hard and they're not a douche, then teach them. But after 6 months, if they're sketchy, you're probably gonna know it.
yeah. So that's the hard part, right? Is like most people don't make it to 6 months, like,
Yeah.
or even close to it, right? Like if I look at, and this isn't being like sexist at all, but if I look at like a women's self-defense class, like they might come in for a few weekends, to do some things, get some training in or whatever, and get some very basic tips on how to get to the back and strangle somebody, right? But like in a realistic situation, are they actually going to be able to put somebody on the ground? Maybe, maybe not, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
There's a huge problem in my head that's kind of like, hey, I kind of feel like you should know the most violent acts first. And if you want humanity out of it and you want those step downs and be able to be a more effective, efficient type of person and fall in love with the mechanics of things, then you stay on board. But at least you have something to go back on, because I'm afraid that I teach something and that time isn't spent the best way possible. So I feel like I now have an obligation. If I was to show something, it would be those things. So but then there's the legal repercussions of everything too. So that
Sure.
just complicates everything.
Well, I think you bring up,
That's on them though. I don't
Sure.
think that is going to fall back on you as the instructor. If somebody
You're
makes
gonna-
a bad choice and does something that's criminal, then that's on them.
you'd feel
Yeah.
bad about it though. I know that, but
for
I think
sure.
I think you bring up a good point though about just like general self-defense classes, or like you see it in, I know that the old gym owner, Rachel, she used to, the karate instructor, she used to do in the summer times, or like it was once a quarter, she would hold a self-defense class. And I think it was geared as a women's self-defense class, but it was once a quarter on a Saturday. And which is a good thing to do, because you want to show people, like women in particular, like what could happen. But I think you bring up a good point in that it's not effective because there's not enough time.
If you don't get the reps in, it's not going to do you any good. That's
That's
just how
kind of,
that goes.
and that's kind of the conundrum. Like as you're explaining this, what comes to my mind is this might get a little philosophical, but what comes to my mind is warrior monks, like Tibetan monks. They're like super calm and peaceful, but they spend their whole lives like learning how to like fight, but they never do it. And it's like they're probably, you have to do that to be deadly. You can't just do it once and hope it works. Like the whole point of this is to truly understand what it means to be violent in order to not be violent, in order to protect yourself. Like, and it's a scary thing to understand. It's like, I think you're spot on about learning the most violent things first. It's like, if you don't understand the actual violence that can occur, how can you hope to stop it? Because you're a deer in headlights.
Right. And
Yeah.
I think that we can all agree that one thing that we did learn that we didn't think that we were going to learn when we stepped in to go train jiu-jitsu is we learned what mercy actually is.
Yeah.
You've got your buddies, arm extended, you've got their neck, whatever it might be, and you can break them or not. And you learn the limits of what they can actually do and what you can do and where you're actually being destructive. I thought it's one of the most important things. So now you know how to act accordingly, I guess.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing to, like my friends and family have like zero. I don't think they might try a little bit, but they have like zero understanding of like what it is I do.
Mhm.
Because this is like technically my job now. So in part, so and like they'll ask me, and I'm like, I strangle people. Because that's like the funny thing. That's what you say when people ask what you do in jiu-jitsu. Like, well, I choke people, I break their arms, and everyone's like, why would you want to do that? And it's like, until you do it, like I can't even describe like like the benefits of it. It's such a surreal thing to like try and explain to like my mom, my grandmother, like, no, grandma, strangling people is a good thing. Like, I'm a better person for this. You loved me before, but I am so much better of a human because
Meanwhile,
I strangle
she's like
people.
knitting.
Yeah, it's like I strangle people 5 days a week, and like I'm such a good person.
We get it.
That's a little counterintuitive, but yeah.
Very much. Do you find that doing jiu-jitsu brings you a sense of peace?
Yeah, man. I mean, shit, I've had hard days with both of you guys. I mean, there was a very specific day that I met Dan on the mats, and he just rolled me up and tossed me out like I was a piece of hot trash. I was like, oh shit. I was like, man, I need to go rethink some things. Just those ones where like you get to your car, and you just look at putting the keys in the, and you're just like, oh, son of a bitch, what are you doing with your life? But you feel so relieved. You're like, oh man, I know it's real. Oh man, like that feeling is so great.
I remember two grappling sessions in particular have always stuck out to me. One was one of the first, right after I got my blue belt, I rolled with Brian, and it might actually be the first time him and I rolled, but he fucked me up. I thought I could do things because I was a blue belt. I wasn't like, I'm good. Like I knew it wasn't good. Like I want to preface this. I want to be like, okay, like he obviously thought I could do enough to warrant being a blue belt. So it's like, okay, like, and I got, at this point I had, I had 30 pounds, maybe 35 pounds on him. And I was like, I'll be able to like, at least like stand up. Like I figured I could stand up, and I couldn't. Like I was telling this to Brian, and I don't think he remembers this when we had him on the podcast, but like I would stand up and he would just like somehow manage to just smash me into the ground. And he's 140 pounds. And I'd try and get up when he would sweep me, because he would like intentionally sweep me, but not get on top of me. And I would try and get up, and then he would just shove me back down to the ground again, and then just armbar me, and then just choke me. But the second story is I came in on a Friday during the old open mat, and I met you there, Shawn, and you were like, what do you want to go over today? And I was like, I had like a really, really tough day. I don't remember what happened during the day. And you kind of looked at me like, is everything all right? And I was like, well, what do you like to go over when you're having a really bad day? And you're like, let's just roll. And so we rolled for like an hour straight before class. I don't know if you remember this. We rolled for like an hour straight. Like I had a really fucking hard day. I don't, like I said, I don't remember what it was, work related. Something had happened at work, and it was like I was thinking about leaving my job. Like it was pretty bad. And I don't think I've ever felt better after thoroughly exhausting myself than in that moment. It was one of those things where like after all the classes, I came home with like this shit-eating grin on my face. My girlfriend's like, are you feeling better? I'm like, oh my God, that was fucking amazing. Like Shawn just rolled me up and down the floor for like 60 minutes. And then I did 2 classes, and then I rolled with him again, and he choked me a bunch. It was amazing. I feel so good. I'm going back to work on Monday. Like it's not a problem.
Mat therapy, baby.
It's mat therapy. Yeah. It was just one of those days where like I might remember little small parts of different roles, but like those two specifically kind of stuck out to me as like opposites, right? Because Brian fucked me up so bad. It was the only time I've ever felt disheartened after jiu-jitsu. I know everyone has those moments. I've had one, and that was it. And then it was kind of the polar opposite, where like it was just I had so much like internal like frustration that we just sort of ground into the mat. And I feel for everyone right now who's like stuck inside and can't roll.
Yeah.
Yep. Like that kind of shit works. Like it's therapy.
100%.
Yeah. Go ahead, Dan.
I've said a bunch of times, anytime I got to spend time out for whatever reason, and right now, COVID included, if I don't get to choke somebody, I'm going to fucking choke somebody.
Yeah. I feel you, man. Like when all this started happening, like going down, and I wasn't really too like, I think that I was definitely freaking out. Because I think that everybody kind of was, and was like, oh shit, people dying everywhere, and then I was like, I was so frustrated. I was gonna start putting out or not Facebook, but Craigslist ads like, hey, if you want to meet at the park, like like I don't care if you've had training. I'm just, it was just, just so stressed out, just like whatever, but
Like those old
yeah.
school Brazilian ads they used to put out in the 30s. Like, you think you're tough? You want to come get beat up? Or like, come try and beat us up? Just
Challenge match.
Right, exactly.
I remember seeing there's this ad for actually Pedro Sauer. It was super old. And this guy was like, the Sunday, that voice or whatever. He's like, oh, you think you're a badass? No, come on down to the gym. This guy's going to fuck you up. And I was just like, oh, man, this is great.
That's classic.
That's awesome.
Oh.
Who's your jiu-jitsu hero?
Man, there's so many good guys. The guy who I like watching the most right now is Gary Tonin.
Yeah.
Love watching him because he throws himself in the fire so much. Does a lot of weird stuff. Looks at all the different cheats of angles. Very high-paced match, so it's not so much. I mean, he wants to win, but it's not so much about the win. It's actually moving it along and not being boring. So, and then also his translation from grappling to MMA and still leg locking people and proving the point that like it's a valid thing.
Yeah.
I like that. I mean, obviously Gordon Ryan, the guy is a genius. A lot of people don't look at him that way because of the way he promotes himself and his character. But man, that guy knows jiu-jitsu in and out. Like when I went and met him for one of his seminars, it wasn't like we were having coffee, but I went to one of his seminars down in Portland.
That's right.
And
yeah.
this guy, man, he just the instruction was incredible, and it gave the most specific goals that I've ever seen live. Okay, for one. The second part of it, and that could be rehearsed, okay, arguably. But then he sat down for like another hour and a half and just answered questions on anything. It didn't matter what it was. And this guy with pinpoint accuracy knew exactly what they were saying and explained in different details exactly what your options are for high percentage moves. And it wasn't like, oh, this move, it was like mechanics of the move to make it work, right? So, all the DDS guys are amazing. Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of other guys. There's also like, I like watching some of the older stuff too. I mean, I watched some like Marcelo Garcia like a week ago, and I still like watching some of the old matches, even though the style has completely changed and how people look at things, and the types of problems that actually come up were so much more simple back then. Rather than when you look at Nogi now, or you look at like 10th Planet guys and the way that they roll, there's a lot of talent. So
Yeah.
but those are the two that just like automatically just stick out.
How do you think that someone like old school Marcelo, or maybe like Dean Lister during his first ADCC run in particular, would stack up against some of the newer guys, say the 10th Planet guys, or even Gordon Ryan, Craig Jones?
They wouldn't hang with purple belts.
You don't think so?
No, it's like impossible. If you look at the older footage, like so like Marcelo Garcia, because it's fresh in my mind, right? Like a lot of the guys, when they're even passing guard, it was kind of like they're in a hunched over stance. They would stay square to their opponent, so they were exposing the center line, and that's why he was so good at just sitting in a flat butterfly, not having a broken stance on one hip or the other, and actually cutting different angles and being aggressive with it. So he would just step and he would just wait for them to basically try to flank him in an aggressive, speedy way, and then he would get caught up in the legs. I mean, it was very simple. It was not like but the way that he moved, the way that his knees were, the way that he was able to flex his ankles out and get an extremely wide base is extremely impressive, as far as and his body awareness was amazing. But how his body moved is where I was trying to get to, was very good. But the mechanics are so much better. Even the basic stuff, right? Like if you, Beau, have a right leg lead, right, then I should have my left leg forward if I'm in butterfly.
Mm-hmm.
Like really basic stuff, right? Because just like in boxing, right? When you're playing, like I'm an orthodox guy, lefty forward, right? And I'm fighting somebody who's a southpaw, right? Well, you're basically fighting this game to basically you're playing the outside foot game, right? So you're cutting a flank, right? You have that, and then when you square up, there's the center line to actually hit them, but you get jammed up with your lead hand. Same with on the feet, right? You're getting jammed up on that front foot, and that's what you're trying to do is slow that down, so that now you have the ability for when they square up to attack the center line.
Sure.
So it's the same. So it's the same thing where you decide to step into more of a half guard, and now you've got like a flank where you're starting to take the back, right? So that's kind of the like I mean I know I'm talking extremely general principles here, but when I look at older matches, it was just kind of sit in butterfly where you're in a square butterfly, and just kind of sit there and wait for them to make the first move, and as they step across, you're either catching onto something to get to their back, or you're getting into anything with inside position. So a lot of times it would end up in single X.
Yeah. So Brian likes Rickson Gracie a lot, and I'm you're smiling. I'm curious how you think Rickson would stand up if he was in his prime today.
Man,
as a
coming out for me, Beau. Why are you doing this to me, Beau? All right, man, you're asking me all these questions. I'm just like destroying these grappling gods. I'm like, I have no right. I'm nobody. Okay, like you put me up against anybody that's even relatively good. Like I'm gonna get smashed.
Sure.
But I'm more of like a spectator. I want to be an educated spectator. I want to know what's going on, even if I don't know what's happening when I'm in it sometimes, right?
Yeah,
but I'm always like watching it, thinking, I want to be an educated spectator. But so like, I don't know what he does now. Like what I've seen, he does take a lot of pictures with blue belt girls, and goes to awesome places in the world and hangs out, and he talks about invisible jiu-jitsu, and what I think is that 99% of the time, good jiu-jitsu, you can just see it. So I understand, like, there's a hierarchy. I understand that it's this weird thing where you got to know where your place is in line, and then you get older, and by the time you're old, maybe you're a black belt or whatever, but you have rank on somebody and you might know more, but you still get smashed by an athletic purple belt that knows enough how to get around, and they have like 3 passes, and they have a good amount of submissions, right? They have a good arsenal on them, but more, right? But there are all these very, very specific things. In most cases, right now anyways, this will change over time, but right now that seems to actually be a thing where a good purple or brown belt will beat a black belt that's been a black belt for 10 years, and it's a weird thing right now. We're going through this massive change of structure and everything else. And then, like, if you've been in it for so long, well, then you get, extra stripes, and then, you might become a coral belt one day, which would be super cool. But like, you don't see coral belts like wiping the mat with like any competitive black belt.
No. By the time you get your coral, you're playing old man jiu-jitsu.
Yeah. You're thinking of different scenarios and enjoying the mental game of all the jiu-jitsu,
sure.
which is freaking awesome. Okay, it really is. But in jiu-jitsu, until you get to black belt, because the belt is kind of just a grade on where you get to compete at. Like, that's really what it's there for, and where you fall in line. Like, do you really care that much on like where you stand at in line, or to hold rank on? No, this is how you shrimp. Like, and then the first thing I think about is Beau hitting his head on the wall when he shrimp.
Hey, this is my podcast. You don't get to bring up embarrassing stories about me on my podcast, motherfucker. Okay.
I'm going to veto that because this is actually our podcast. So continue, Shawn.
Nice.
I am pulling rank.
Thank you.
I'm the lowest ranked belt on this podcast, and I'm pulling rank.
That's awesome. I don't even know where we were going with all that, but
well, I'll put in my 2 cents on Rickson. Just from the reports of pretty much anybody who ever actually rolled with him. Again, you know, when he was in his prime back in the day, so to speak, his ability to just wreck world champions is, you know, legendary. Of course, it's Rickson. And I think that not only his understanding of the techniques, but you know, what he dubs the invisible jiu-jitsu, his ability to connect and consume space is not something that you can see, hence invisible jiu-jitsu, but not something that you can see just by watching. And then when you feel it, it's like, what the fuck was that? You know, I was listening to an interview of a black belt who was very successful in competition, and he rolled with Rickson. And he sat there after they rolled, and he was just kind of dazed. It was like, there was no space. I couldn't move. And, you know, so Rickson's ability to do the basics, stuff we all know, but at such a high level, I think he would still hold up quite well. I wouldn't, you know, claim he's gonna be world champion or anything, but I would imagine he would still be quite competitive.
Yeah, I think he would do well. I don't want to take anything away from the guy, because I like looking at the footage that when he was just destroying people in Vale Tudo, you know, in that choke movie, and you know, whatever. I mean, he was actually destroying people, and like he got put into this like upside down, like he looked like he was about to get dropped on his head from like 6 feet in the air, and he flipped around and like just reversed the guy. I mean, it was like insane, right? Like, I mean, we actually have tape of this stuff. You can look it up on YouTube. It's totally accessible. You know, was he a great fighter? No doubt about it. But there's also that things have expanded so much.
Yeah.
And the basic, the understanding of basics right now have changed so much that it's the argument is there that he would have a challenge. It wouldn't be just like you're the greatest and would just smash everybody.
Oh no, of course
you
not.
know.
Yeah.
But I think that's where it was like 5 years ago.
Wow. People have been tooting his horn since forever, really.
Yeah.
But
I
think
wonder-
it's you know, in my experience, and I resonate with this because it's kind of where where I'm trying to get my game to go, mainly just because I'm old, so I want to stick with the basics. But the ability to shut down something before it has a chance to happen, like if he can break and control your posture, it doesn't matter how many techniques you know or how well you know them, is just not going to let you get into a position that's effective. And you'll keep looking for, I'm going to do this, but I just can't. Oh, if I can just get my elbow, and then you got to tap. So that's kind of my experience of it. And in a you know, infinitely smaller way, when I personally started focusing on stuff like that, as far as like connection and soaking up space, it shut down a lot of stuff that I know people would have done to me, you know? So just in keeping it simple and not allowing a whole lot of movement to happen and trying to connect as best I can, was surprisingly effective in my experience. Even if it wasn't fancy, it keeps the fancy shit from happening.
No, I know that that's absolutely true. And that's how you roll in certain positions, especially mount. It just sticks out to me. So like most people have kind of like a loosey-goosey mount until they get like a head hug, but it's usually not that great anyways, to be honest. But you use an asymmetrical mount where your head is completely offline of the person, you're cross-facing, or if they move away from the cross-face, you put my chin to the ceiling, right? And then at the same time, you're taking my spine out of balance. You're on purpose, biting your thighs past my hips, so you're actually pinching different things together. You're nodding your head. I know this. Like these are things that you do that are not, that would not be in like that common type of basics. But now those basics are actually much more available. People are switching to that. This is option A. Like you should not be in this where your hands are on the ground or like, you know, you're floating around. Like you need to control that head and you need to rotate that spine a bit.
Yeah.
You know, these are things that are, you know, but it's one thing to say it and see it. It's another thing to have those fine details and actually feel that. So
that reminds me of Mark. What you guys are describing just reminds me of grappling with Mark.
Reminds me of Dan.
Yeah.
It does remind me of Dan, but Mark feels more oppressive when I grapple with Mark.
I'm working on it.
That's not a knock on you, Dan. That's not a knock on you at all. Like in the slightest. Like he just, you and I grapple, I feel like you'll do that, and then maybe you'll let me move a little bit, or you'll just be really flexible, or maybe I'm just getting better at getting out of things. I think it's you're just letting me move. But when I roll with Mark, it's like Mark's like, I'm only going to let you do the things that I want you to do, only for as long as I want to, and then I have to get home soon. And so you're just going to sit here, and I think I'm going to choke you right now because it's been 10 seconds, and then I got to go home to my wife and kids. And he's like very oppressive about it.
He's got the most specific pressure I've ever felt. I'll definitely say that. He has a very specific pressure. Like there's no wet blanket unless he wants to. And usually that isn't the method that he uses because he only weighs like $170.
Yeah,
he's very specific. He's going to put pressure in a weird spot on your bicep, and that's where he concentrates all that energy. And man, you want to tap just from bicep pressure. It's the dumbest thing.
I'm curious if have you ever rolled with Kyle McCutcheon, and he's like that?
McCutcheon?
McCutcheon, sorry.
Dude,
He's a bigger guy. So
oh gosh, Kyle is okay. So Kyle, I just he doesn't know this, but I basically dubbed him Thanos. Like dude, this guy just like, okay, so I thought that I was like getting somewhere, to your point with like Brian or whatever. Like I thought that I was doing okay. I thought I could do something, anything. Yeah. And this guy, the way that he feels is like if you had like a 200-pound vase and it was like a glass, right? And you decided to put olive oil all over it and try to hold it, right? That's what that guy feels like. Like, I mean, I swear that guy puts olive oil on his skin before we roll or something. Because like, I can't get nothing going, like nothing. It's the most ridiculous thing. So Kyle is, he's obviously much bigger than me, but he just destroys me with technique. Like he's got, I mean, every once in a while he'll kind of like press the gas maybe to his 50%. Like, and I'm trying to, say 50% because like it's probably really is 10, but where I'm ready to tap. But like, no, he absolutely just destroys me. He doesn't even play guard with me half the time. He just lets me get side control, and that's where we start. And we'll roll for good amounts of time. And he's going at my pace, and I can't keep up, and I'm on top. Like it's so ridiculous, and his game is vastly different than mine, right? Yeah. But he is man, he is really good. He is really good. Over at Kindred, I never finished the rest of my origin story, I guess. So moved over to Kindred like a year or two ago, and nothing but good things to say about that place. Love it. There's so many good people over there. Obviously, Kyle, our senior instructor there is John Sylvester. He's definitely more old school. So he's all about that smash, but the nicest guy ever. We've got competitors like Austin Daffron, who unless he's probably the best guy around my size that I've ever grappled with. Like he's amazing. He's a professional grappler.
Yeah.
I didn't realize he was a Kindred now.
Yeah, he's been over there for a while. Okay. I know that he was at Kirkland for a little bit. I don't know how long.
Not very, but yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But he's absolutely amazing. There's so many good people. Like, I don't want to go down a laundry list, but there's probably about 20 people that are just like amazing. And then there's past that, there's a huge amount of people that are just really, really good. Mm-hmm. So it's a really fun place to be. And, but I don't know where I was going with that. But I just completely brain farted.
No worries. I missed their open mats on Saturdays because since you moved there, I started going to the Saturday open mats, and I will agree, they're some of the nicest people and the funnest rolls.
Yeah, very playful.
Very playful, super high level, all very different, which is nice. I like that everyone there's kind of got their own little specialty, which makes it a little bit more fun. Like I don't know, unless I know who the people are, like I don't know exactly what they're going to do. Some of them are, very wrestle heavy. Some of them are very leg lock heavy. Some like old school traditional. Some like to do a lot of inverted fancy crap that I don't care about. And
Got a few of those, yeah, for sure.
but no, I totally agree. It's a lot of fun over there, right? God, I just miss rolling. This is bullshit.
Yeah, man.
So to bring it back, actually, no, go ahead and finish with that.
I was just going to talk about open mat. One of the things that I missed about it on these like cold days and stuff. And like, I remember these with Cindy when she was at Kirkland, we'd walk in and it'd be like, just, freezing balls outside. And, you'd come in on an open mat and like everybody's just like steaming. So it just looks like people's like warrior souls like coming out of their body. And there's like, until you actually see that, man, it's like, it's just it's surreal when you walk in and you just see that and you feel it and you can like, I hate to say it, but you can smell it, there's just something to that where you walk in and it's like, I don't know, it's motivating in a weird way.
For sure.
Have you ever had, let's say with Kyle in particular, ever rolled with him and then afterwards you get smashed and then he's like, nice job. Like you did good. Has that ever happened to you? I think I remember you telling me this happened with Austin before.
That I got smashed and he told me I did a good job.
Yeah, I vaguely remember you telling me this with him, but I wasn't sure if this had ever happened with Kyle because he told me that once and I didn't understand what the hell he was talking about.
Oh, I don't know. To be honest, like usually after rolling with Kyle specifically, I mean, I have nothing left and he knows it. And he knows that like, I don't want to just like stop rolling because I'm having such a good time. But at the same time, like I got nothing for this guy. I had nothing when I was fresh, Now I'm just like this beat up worm looking thing, and so it's like, I mean, I'm sure he said things to me and just like, way over my head, cause I had nothing left,
Yeah.
So
I remember that though, one of the first few times I rolled with him, maybe it was the second time, I can't remember exactly, but he just fucked me up, right? And he actually, when him and I roll, my memory of him is kind of like how Trino rolls in that he's more of like a wet blanket. He never really like smashed me. He just like kind of laid on me a little bit and let me move, but I couldn't do anything,
Mm-hmm.
But I'm trying to do stuff and failing miserably, and then I'll get tapped repeatedly, and he'll do like he likes wrist locks.
He loves wrist locks.
Yeah, he's wrist locked me like a dozen times. And so like we're grappling and I'm trying.
It means
stuff,
you weren't acting right.
Yeah, right, exactly. And, so we're grappling at the end and we slap hands and he's like, nice job, man. Like, I'm pretty sure he was like, yeah, you're getting better from the last time. And I'm like, you just like laid on me for like 7 minutes. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, I didn't even move. You just funny. Sat on me and wrist locked me for 7 minutes straight. I think I wasn't choked for 12 seconds. Like, I guess that's improvement.
Oh man. No, his wrist locks are ridiculous. Like he makes, like, you guys have all seen like the 10th Planet, like lock flows that they do, right? Mm-hmm. They have like, that's how they do their like warm-ups is they have like different types of flows. And then they'll have like lock flows where it's like armbar to triangle to omoplata to, whatever, invert the needed leg locks or whatever they're doing. Right.
Yeah.
Well, Kyle does that with wrist locks.
Really?
Yeah, he does. but he's doing that. He doesn't actually want to get the sub. He says he doesn't want to get the sub, right? But he does it so that you get into a position where you're breaking your own posture or planting your hand to the ground, and now he just attacks you either positionally or with real submissions. So maybe he's setting up a wrist lock so that he can go to like a Kimura grip, or maybe he's doing it to put your hand on the mat. So now he can play some other thing, and. Like I don't want to talk him up like he's like this grappling god, but because there's so many good people out there. But I mean, when I felt like his technique and he wasn't using his body weight, he was just wedging me, and I was like, oh shit, like a lot of stuff that I don't know.
That's how I feel like every time I'm on the mat with somebody.
So Shawn, tell us about your like competition experience. Have you done much competing?
No, I'm not a competition guy. I just think it's important to do it at every belt, I don't really know what else to say besides that. I'm definitely not a competition guy. Like I hate dieting. You know, I hate it so much. Like I don't do much cross training, if any. You know, like I just like jujitsu a lot. So I'm not like the gold standard of like what people would be like, oh, this is an athlete, or no, not at all. No, you look at me, you'll be like, not that guy. Nope. You know?
Gotcha. All
Yeah.
right.
But I do think it's important for, you know, somebody at every belt level, like that you actually go out, you compete. I think that that's important because it keeps you honest with yourself, most importantly. And that's all that the belts, I mean, the belt matters, but it doesn't matter. It's this weird, stupid thing that it matters, you know, and like if you go out into a competition and you don't do well, and then let's say that a lower level person ends up smashing you and they shouldn't, and you don't know why, that's a problem.
Mhm.
You know, and you need to go and fix those things. If you know why you're getting smashed, that's one thing, but a lot of people that are getting smashed right now, they don't know why.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
just like, well, if I just spend more time on the mat, that's like partially true, but like you actually need to study.
Yeah.
You need to actually study and like figure out some things so that you mentally know where to go, so that your body has a target to run after. You know, just because you're fast doesn't mean that you're aimed at the finish line. So,
No, very,
Ooh, I like
that's
that.
good. Yeah.
ooh,
No,
did I
that's
just drop a hot one? Oh
Ooh,
man.
damn.
that's good stuff.
Sean dropping logic. I love it. Yeah. No, that's basically kind of what happened to me when I competed last year. Was that I knew what was going on. It wasn't that the people that I competed with were doing things that I wasn't aware of, but it was more that kind of a gut check, or maybe a mind check of like, I got to be better prepared for this. Like it just kind of came at me a little bit quicker than I was expecting. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's good to. I actually agree with you that everyone should do that, should compete, just to at least know the difference with the adrenaline and the unfamiliar environment and the people you don't know. And there's at least something on the line, whether you care about it or not, because it is drastically different. It's just faster.
Yeah, and like, you know, there's all the anxiety, you know, and
Oh yeah.
I'm probably the worst at this. You know, I throw up before every competition. You know, I mean, that was like my first competition experience, was like literally I was like in the trash can, and they're like, Shawn, you know, my guy's already there. I'm like, oh gosh, you know, it was terrible experience, you know, but I was like, okay, now I gotta go do something. You know, it gets a little
Right.
bit better every time, but like, you know, that's still there. And I think that most of that comes from like this ego of like, oh man, I'm getting recorded, whatever I do, like it's going to be critiqued for years. Like nobody cares. Like, you know what I mean? Especially if you're not in like a pro level, like nobody cares. Like if you end up being a highlight reel on somebody's Instagram, like nobody really gives a fuck anyways. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? Like that's the main thing. It's like nobody wants to go out there and just get shown up so hard that like they get embarrassed. You know, it's not so much about the injury. Like we all say we don't want to get injured, and it's true, right? But I think the main thing is that nobody wants to just get embarrassed and annihilated. And everybody knows, like, especially if you're a casual and like you want to see how you're going to do, like there's people that are competing that shouldn't be competing with you, that are at a pro level, or they're a full-time
Mhm.
grappler. You know what I mean? These are completely different things.
Yeah.
So I mean, they really should separate those people. There's a guy, Rob Bernanke, you know who he
Oh
is.
yeah, I know, Rob.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So he had a podcast, and he was talking about it. He's like, yeah, they shouldn't compete against each other. And I was like, yeah, they really shouldn't. Yeah. So, but
That's a good point. Yeah, that would be a nice way to separate things up a little bit. Kind of the hobby level weekend guys, let them go after it, and then the pro folks get it for real.
yeah,
I
go ahead.
actually enjoyed, because I was destroyed. I know it, Sean in particular, you know, because you were there, but I did not do very well in my first competition at all. I did better in my successive matches because I actually started to move, but I kind of had the opposite that you had, in that instead of getting like anxious beforehand and like sick, I was like way too calm and just didn't do anything. Because I was trying to conserve energy, and so I just, instead of actually reacting to the things that were happening to me, I just sort of kind of stood there, and then at one point kind of laid there. But two of the guys that I grappled with were both, they grappled a lot. One of them, like I could be the highlight reel for this teenage kid, Dylan. I think it's Dylan Melton. Is that his name?
I'm not sure.
He's a checkmat kid. He's I know he does actually grapples professionally. Him and his mom both do. But I watched a video of him afterwards, I think on your suggestion, Sean. But he had fought like a purple or a brown belt, like a grown adult, like another grown adult, and like armbarred him in like 30 seconds in like some pro fight. Like that's absolutely absurd. But I remember thinking when I was grappling him and some of the other kids, like, or the people, nothing they were doing like shocked me. Like it was just more of like, I got into a position and I was like in a shitty position. And I was like, well, I kind of already fucked this up. I probably should have moved like 30 seconds ago.
Cue Oceander. Yeah.
Right, exactly. That's what I was thinking. I remember specifically actually with the Dylan kid, he tried to get a mounted guillotine, but he had it wrong. So I was like just on the ground and he was mounted with his hand over my neck, but it wasn't doing anything. And I sat there for like 40 seconds. Like at one point I almost like fixed the choke so he would choke me so I could get up because I was like uncomfortable, but I couldn't move because he was sitting on, like I couldn't get up. I couldn't bridge it or anything. And I was like, God, I fucked this up a long time ago, but at least he's not like doing things to me that I don't understand. Like I'm just waiting for him to figure out how to choke me because I couldn't get his hand out. It was like the angle was weird, but yeah, it's definitely something I think everyone should do. Just knowing that now, like I've learned more since that moment, like in the last 6 months of 2019, just my ability, just me trying to study more and really pay attention to what I'm doing and why, just from those very obvious failures. Like everything that occurred in my competition against the 3 opponents I had was like, I actually watch the videos still. Like every now and again, I'll pull them up and rewatch them, and I just cringe. I'm like, seriously? Like,
Yeah, that type of pressure,
yeah,
it rattles your thought process if you're not
it
used
does.
to it. What's your thoughts on competing, Dan?
I feel the same way. Ironically, I have not yet competed yet, but yeah, I think it's important to, it's a form of a test to put yourself under as much pressure as you can safely and legally to really see where you're at.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as you go in with the right attitude, win or learn, it can be incredibly valuable for exactly the reason that you said, to kind of ferret out the areas that you need to work on so you can find them and pinpoint them and get that work done. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot. I mean, what I see a lot of too now is like it's not so much that the other guy's like terrible. It's just like people are really good at certain things. They're dragging you into waters that you're not, you're not as versed in.
Right. Yeah.
So, a lot of people are getting very specific on the back now, and really just hunting the back like they, like it's a life or death situation. Some people are more guillotine oriented, and just hunting the shit out of it. Some people are, it seems like the leg locks are evening out quite a bit now. And it's just like an ongoing scramble. And usually they'll give up a leg lock to chase back or something along those lines now. At
That
least
makes
for the
sense, though.
no-gi.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's, so I hope that, there's less of a gap between the gi and the no gi soon. I hope they start allowing leg locks in the gi.
I was just going to ask you that if how you
Oh,
feel about the leg lock changes.
I just saw, IBJJF is now allowing heel hooks.
Hell yeah, about time.
Yep.
So that's great. That's one step. We need to keep going with this though, and just make it all good. And
So
gi, no gi.
is it they're allowing leg lock or heel hooks in, is it brown and black belt gi and no gi for IBJJF? Is that right?
My understanding for where it sits right now. I think they're still ironing stuff out, so I don't know where this is going to sit starting next year, but for sure they said that 2021 they're going to start allowing brown and blacks to start heel hooking.
Does that include reaping, or is it just
reaping?
Okay.
All that's good. That got tossed out a long time ago. I just the whole like, oh, you reap, you break the leg. It's like, well, it's kind of like anything else. If it doesn't feel good, go with it. It's like if you're reaping, don't go into the reap.
So,
I think this man's trying to hurt me. Yeah.
So
unfortunately, that's how James got his leg broke. But
oh yeah, well, yeah, that was definitely
devastating.
unfortunate. Yeah, that sucked.
Yeah.
So on the leg lock note, I'm curious what your thoughts are on for competing, or just I guess in the gym. These will be two separate questions, I suppose. But when should you be allowed to do leg locks?
I think you should be able to drill everything at white belt.
What about competition?
Also, like my whole idea of like white and blue and purple is like consistently changing on what that is. Just
Mhm.
taking a look around. So I thought that, something along the lines of like at white belt, pretty much where it's at right now is completely fine. Straight ankle lock, pretty much. But it should be consistent with another straight, like a knee bar, as far as leg locks are concerned. And then when you get into blue or purple, I mean, I'm not a judge, so I wouldn't know this stuff, but I think that's where more of the twisting stuff should be allowed. So like even if you're starting to allow twisting stuff, like I would always allow reaps. Like that should just be a thing. Like just, if like that argument's over. Like reaping should just be allowed. All right. Like even for straight ankle locks. And then I think toe holds should be allowed probably at blue belt, and like all the heel hooks at purple. I think that's pretty realistic. So that you have different things to bounce off of instead of like I only have this straight ankle lock and then you get your back took because all you have is a straight ashi position and you don't know how
Right,
to really
right.
work very well, rather than
Yeah.
like, oh, now I'm gonna actually rotate into, a knee bar or whatever, and then the other guy has a toe hold if you rotate. If you
Right.
rotate wrong, you have a toe hold right there. So it makes it a lot more of a fun game instead of like this stuck in like, what are my white belt rules or what are my blue belt rules? Being able to fight openly, I think, is better. Like if you're going to go compete, you better know how to tap. And your coach hopefully educated you on, if you don't know where you're at, like just tap.
Yeah.
Like, like, somebody's got you in a Kimura and you've never seen a Kimura before. You should tap.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's just
Okay.
good coaching. So Shawn, tell
All
me
right.
about how much like self-defense specific training have you done?
Um, quite a bit. I mean, if I don't know what you count. I mean, as far as like traditional martial arts, I guess, is that what you're asking me?
Well,
Or?
no, I guess throwing on gloves or including slaps when you roll, a bit more like actual pressure testing of some of it, rather than, I mean, you get the old techniques as well, but I guess more just including striking into the grappling in a safe and controlled manner.
So, I would definitely say not enough. But I mean, I probably do it more than most. But like, man, I look at how some of the guys were training for like so Austin Daffron, I just call him Duck, that's his nickname, is Duck. But anyways, like Duck, when he's like prepping for his combat jiu-jitsu world stuff for Eddie Bravo and all that stuff, right? That, like, I mean, he's going hard with the palm strikes. So it's like I don't want, like, like I can't tell you, like, that guy, when he's an awesome training partner, but man, when he gets on his palm strikes and stuff, like I don't want any part of that. I don't want to play like that. So like I want to go home and like, still like feel like, oh, I learned something, and not get those thoughts beat out of me. So, I mean, some of those guys, they go super ham on it, because they're prepping for a real competition in it. So it's like, why
Yeah.
wouldn't you?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but I mean, my level is not there, but I mean, do I practice different things with different people that, aren't going to, blast me straight in the face, Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Nice. Well, if we ever get back to the mats, that's definitely something I want to incorporate, just to make sure I'm not fostering bad habits and stuff like that,
Oh yeah.
or something like that. 'Cause for me, as much as like competition is entertainment and I enjoy watching it, but my jujitsu, I want to focus as much as I can on something that'll be applicable to self-defense, which, to simplify it, is basically just old school, you know.
Sure.
But I haven't really done much training where somebody actually, if they have the opportunity, is going to, pop me in the chops because I left myself open,
Yeah.
which is absolutely going to happen if something goes sideways and you find yourself, with some big football player on top of you thinking that you looked at his girlfriend or some shit, and you got to deal with it. Yeah. So
I started teaching that to the kids when I started teaching when Brian started having me teach the kids classes by myself. That's one of the first things I did, is I was like, I'd show them some things. And every time I'm like, we're going to learn it. No resistance. We're going to learn it with some resistance, so you can kind of get a feel for it. And then I want you to do it again, but slap each other in the face. Like, do this while the person's trying to slap you, because I mean, I'm teaching them, so we're teaching them, the Pedro Sauer self-defense stuff anyways. I might modify it a little bit, but it's like, that's the whole point. So you might as well, it's like, I want them to figure it out because they're kids and they don't compete a lot. So like for them, this is much more of a recreational thing than a serious thing, which is totally fine. But at the same time, I want them to understand, like, some kid at school tries to fight you, they're not going to be like nice about it. This isn't like one of our games that we play. Like,
We're not going to slap hands first.
yeah, like,
Yeah,
and if you lose, you go to the wall and the next person up. Like, it doesn't work that way. It's like, so you got to watch out, and I remember one of the first times I told the adults, because I do this when I teach the adult classes, if and when I do, and I'm like, we're going to do a move and then you're going to slap. So like, boys, watch out, because someone might hit you in the nuts. Like,
Yeah.
you're trying to like pass the guard, like you're not watching yourself, you might just get punched in the dick. Like, you kind of got to be on guard for that sort of stuff. Like, this is real life, and
So like, what you're saying is exactly how I thought probably 2 weeks ago. Okay. So what I'm starting to think now more and more so is like, oh, this person that's attacking you either, has watched a lot of UFC or whatever, and maybe they don't just do what normal people do, which is going to be run across above your shoulder line and start soccer kicking you. And if you aren't practicing how to get out of that situation, like, you should be practicing both and understanding that is a superior position, and you should know and feel what that feels like, to, even if there's no contact, just the peer pressure mentally of them being there, and like, what are my options?
Yeah. When you say above the shoulder line, what do you mean by that?
So this line between, say, the top of my shoulder to the other top of my shoulder, that's the line that joins my shoulders. That's your shoulder line.
Right.
So if their feet are above that and you're laying flat on your back.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So
Didn't
one's
have the picture in
standing.
my head. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So one person is standing, right? And the other person is on their back. You put anybody there, right? I mean, you put Mike Tyson in his prime there, he's going to have a hard time with a 4-foot person.
Yeah.
It's just what it is. Maybe not Mike Tyson, but yeah, he might just punch him in the foot and it's all over, right? So it's
break the foot, yeah.
But it's such a dominant position, and they have to do so much to be able to recover unless you actually know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Right. So that's where you start getting into the argument of like, okay, inverts and leg locks.
That's what I was thinking, is you just invert into like a knee bar or some shit.
I mean, well, I'm just saying, like, maybe it might not be a mix of both. I'm just saying that's where that comes into play. If you're going to be using jiu-jitsu, like, you can't like just stand up, because you're going to get kneed in the face or blasted or kicked or whatever.
Right.
But somehow you need to make some type of barrier, some type of defense somehow.
Yeah.
Right. Or you've got to be able to roll away quick enough. These are different scenarios that you got to just, like, if somebody just appears there, because that does happen.
Yeah. Protect the off button.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm curious what your favorite submission is, Shawn.
Oh man. Okay. So I got a lot of them, but right now I'm kind of on this.
I want one.
You want one?
Most favorite. And
as
why?
Of right now, or
as of this moment?
I'm fixated right now on bent arm bars.
Okay. Why?
Okay. So there's a new black belt out of Henzo Gracie, Portland. Her name's Hannah Sharp. Monster. If you look her up on YouTube, she just like snaps this girl's arm in half with a Kimura, like, immediately. Like, she's just a killer, and she's very, very smart when it comes to jiu-jitsu. She's very accurate, and she held this seminar completely on her system of bent arm bars. So actually, since then, one of my good buddies, Morgan Matizak, has been specifically been looking at this a lot, and his instructor is 10th Planet Portland is Phil Schwartz, and he calls it a Schwifty. And but it's a really cool position, because you have basically a short triangle where it's like a shallow triangle, but it's still locked up behind their head.
Yeah.
And then you can basically take the arm like an Americana, so it shoulder locks them and is like a twisting type of arm bar at the same time. So you can hit it from that type of triangle. You can also hit it from trap triangle. You can hit it from geez, what am I trying to say? Um, I forgot the name of
No
it,
worries.
and
Is that
but you can hit it from like all these different places.
is that similar to what
Top lock.
Gordon?
That's what I was trying to say. Sorry.
Is it,
Go ahead.
no worries. Is that similar to what Gordon Ryan did to was it Kyle Bain?
That's exactly what he did.
Yeah,
He did the short triangle one.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was thinking. That's what it sounded like. So okay, got it. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
That's it is a nasty armbar. There's like different ways to do it. And the funny thing is like if you don't know that and you get caught in it, man, you're destroyed.
Yeah.
I mean,
It looks up. When I watched that, it looked so painful. I don't know why he didn't tap like 5 seconds earlier.
Oh yeah.
Probably because there was like money on the line, but I would have been like, nope, fuck this. I'm done.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a tricky spot too. Cause like if you like what do you do? Straighten the arm?
Yeah.
You know? Like
so it doesn't hurt as bad.
I mean, like it's a really
worse break.
Yeah, I mean it's bad. I mean, you're using an Americana, right? But you have your body weight and the full force of your hips, of a hip drive, and also the pull of your arms, instead of just the pull of your arms and like maybe some body weight pinning the other shoulder, make it flat.
Right.
Is that similar to a monoplata?
No. So the oh wait, no, I'm thinking of a Barata plata. Yeah. What's a monoplata? I forget.
It sounds really similar to what you're describing. Trying to think if I can describe it over a fucking Zoom call. I recently saw Brian Peterson go over it with Peterson's Grapplers, and it looks very, very useful in the sense that I think he was catching it from side control. So he's on top side, and you scoot your head, side, knee up under so you can trap the arm, right? So you're in side control, scoot your knee up. So now you got the arm between your armpit and your hip. And from there, it's a step over with the head side foot. So basically that comes over the face. But their arm is still going to be bent, but you have it trapped around your body.
Yeah.
So if they're grabbing around here, you trap here, this foot comes over. I know this is fucking terrible.
Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, I actually do this.
Then
this
you lay
is Brian's
back.
favorite armbar. Yeah.
So that way you get the arm is bent like an Americana.
Yeah.
And as you apply, you get essentially an Americana lock. But if they straighten out, then you just flow right into a straight armbar.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's calling that monoplata.
Okay. I don't know it. I don't know it. Yeah. I don't want to say, yes, that's the one. And then, I YouTube and I was like totally the wrong thing. there's so many damn platas.
Yeah.
But
I don't know.
All right. So
if you happen to look it up and if it's the same one you're talking about, or if it's different, shoot me a link to the bent arm bar you're talking about.
Okay. Fair.
Yeah.
So Brian had told me a story once. How he used to he referred to you as his enforcer if necessary in the gym when you were at our gym.
I'm a terrible enforcer.
And so I was hoping that you could tell a story for our listeners, which is really just Dan and I and my mom probably. Okay. And of a time when your enforcer services were required at Brian's gym.
Well, I swear, man, you're just like asking me these questions that are just making me look bad. like what do you think about Hickson? Let me. what do you?
Well, we got to talk about putting the interviewees on blast, man. They never gonna come back.
Oh man. Okay, so I wasn't really a mad enforcer. I was just sticking up for myself. So this is the one time that like really sticks out. So like we had this was at Brian's place before I made the switch to Kindred, but so there's a karate class that's there also, or a full karate gym that's there also, and there's a karate guy there, and he was a black belt in karate, which it's cool. Anyways, anyway, so we're grappling, and I remember him being built kind of like the mix of a potato and a square, but he's just like he looks like he's like muscular, but he eats all day, so he's like real thick.
Yeah,
just one of those guys, right? And maybe he was a real nice kid, but he wasn't that day. And so I was just in seated guard because he, I know that is like the most awkward position for anybody to start in, because you don't know what to do when you're first starting to grapple. Is like, okay, what do I do? Do I grab something? Do I just like go into him and somehow I get to side control? Like, what do I do? And so I was kind of playing that. So I get like one grip on his wrist, and he was like standing, and then he stripped the grip off like really hard and aggressive, and like looked at me like I insulted his mom. And then I was like, it's fine or whatever, So he came back, and he came back in the exact same stance. And so I grabbed his wrist, same way, nothing. And it wasn't like an aggressive grip. Like, this was very much like, I'm touching you. And he literally just pulled back, like stepped back and pulled back, and then just socked me right in the face.
No shit.
Whoa. Yeah. So I mean, so there was this like moment of like, we're in the gym, we're at church type of moment where it's like, it's like, okay, I've got to keep my cool or whatever and not fight this guy. And then I was like, double leg into the wall. And then I ended up like omoplating this guy so bad, and then arm barring him. And I ended up, we were in our, like, he was like, oh my gosh, my hand hurts. And I was like, it's from hitting my face. And then I just grabbed him and just like, I put him in a rear naked choke and picked him up off of the ground because he got to his knees. I picked his knees. So I just kind of dragged his little limp legs across the floor, and then I threw him into the mat when he was tapping. Geez, this makes me sound so bad.
This is my favorite podcast.
But no, I guess the whole gym had stopped and stuff, and we went to Fiesta Friday. Afterward, we all got, for the listeners out there, shout out Beau's mom. We go to Fiesta Friday. It's this little Mexican joint. We call it Fiesta Friday, and we all have like whatever it is that we want. They got some awesome tacos and stuff. But anyways, fajitas, and we were talking about it, and Dave Gray was actually there that night. He goes, that was the most awesome thing I've seen. I was like, oh, you guys saw that? I was like, I feel so ashamed, kind of that feeling like, oh man, I didn't want these things to come back out,
You don't like me when I'm angry.
Yeah, it was Shawn beating up a teenager.
You straighten the guy out? Did he chill out?
Oh, he didn't come back. Oh. And then he did come back later on when we had an in-house tournament. So I used to do like these like little in-house tournaments like every so often. And, the guys really liked it. They had a lot of fun. And he came in and he actually did pretty well, but he got smashed up pretty good. Yeah. And, I don't think that we saw him again after that. I think that after that day
he went to college.
Oh, is that what happened?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when I beat him up, he was probably 15 or something. I don't know.
No, he was
just kidding. I'm just kidding.
No, he was 18 at the time, I think, or 17. He was a senior because it was the same year. I think he went. I don't remember where he went, but I remember the old karate instructor bringing it up. He went to college and how he didn't want to do jiu-jitsu again.
Yeah, see, I told you this is making me look terrible. No, he was like 17. He was like 17. He was a grown man. To
be fair, he had like 30 pounds on you. He was big. He was bigger than you. So
yeah, I mean, he regardless of whatever. I mean, he practiced some type of striking for like over 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
And he reared back and socked me dead in my face without like. I just. Like with everything he had too. It wasn't like a weird reverse punch. Like he just like haymakered me in the face. And I was like, what the? So
he's lucky you didn't put him all the way out. Like that's crossing a really big line. And that's kind of, open season in my opinion.
Yeah.
That's worth that idea. That's worth a limb, I think. I think that's worth like one broken joint.
Yeah. So
maybe just an inside heel hook.
Just take
the knee. You don't need a knee for karate, do you? I don't
like that was such a weird internal battle. Like I mean, thinking back on it, I still remember it. Like, because I wanted to fight, and I was like, and then like all these like feelings were turned on. Like, oh, that's a bad thing. Don't do it here. And just like it's just get over yourself. It's nothing. You're fine. You didn't even get knocked out. I was like, but my face hurts.
He must die.
Yeah.
Oh God, I love it. Have you ever had blue belt blues?
So like a lot of people talk about that.
Yeah,
So, okay,
or purple
this
belt blues,
is,
I guess, because you're a purple belt. So
man, like there's just so much stuff. Okay, so this is a huge question. I'm gonna try my best to like shrink this down into bite size as much as I can. So I feel like personally, okay, and this is gonna be a bit controversial. Okay, get ready. So,
Here we go.
okay, so I feel like people have the blue belt blues for usually like two good reasons. One is like they want to learn what it is and be able to defend themselves against whoever they thought that they were, right? And have a better understanding overall of whatever it is. And then once they get the blue belt, they're like, oh, that's the sign that I have reached that mark. And you know what? Before I even got the blue belt, I was already checked out, right?
mhm.
So there's a lot of that, and then a lot of people don't really fall in love with it. I really truly believe that a lot of people really don't fall in love with it. So the other part of that is more on the instructor side. Okay, now wherever you learn, right? I think that it's important for you to learn it the way that your instructor shows it, but it's also important to question it, right? After you learn it, not in the process and be like, but what about this and this and this and this? I don't mean that. What I'm saying is like, reflecting now, right? Because like we were all in a place where we can reflect. Like, is the way that I'm teaching this now, is this the best version that I have as of now? Right. And I think that a lot of people kind of like get into like a set of DJing almost. Like, this is my set, this is what I do. I know how to,
Yeah.
cut off stage afterward, right? Like, for instance, we're gonna take something super basic, all right, like trap and roll,
Mhm.
right? We all have seen it taught the same way, right? You grab the arm, then you grab the leg on the same side, and you basically do a bridge, and you land on top, and it's all fine and good. And then you get on the mat, and that shit never works for a number of different reasons, right? And like, but we're teaching it backwards because that's not actually how the move usually works. At a higher percentage, you trap the leg first, you shift your hip over, so you're
Yes.
actually trapping the leg, right? And now you have the guy where you're actually in a hand fight, right? Where you can either work up to that hand and actually trap and roll it. They give it to you, and then it's even easier. Or now you're using different things to bump them to get their hand to the mat so that you can go after it. Or they completely abandon it so much that they overcommit to the other side, and now you have like a hip escape or something else on the other side, right? And that's the way it actually works, but we don't teach it that way, right?
Yeah.
Same with cross collar, right? Mounted cross collar choke, right? Like, everybody should know, like, or from guard, doesn't matter, right? We should know that like the cross collar is going to work pretty much no matter what, as long as you get your chin over your hands, right? That's not the problem of actually getting the cross collar to work. It's not. The problem is actually fencing your second hand in to actually get the damn grip.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So we don't spend any time actually fencing and doing like light resistance to heavy resistance on just that drill. Right. Like, if we're going to practice in a game type of situation, we should be working on our fencing when we've already have that position. Getting to that's the important part, right? So the skill of either going underneath an elbow for like a guard type of position, right? Or you have their posture broken, or you're mounted, right? And then you're going basically over the head to the far shoulder and then coming across the neck the other way, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Those are skills that like these are basic things. But then when we see it at a high level, like, everybody's mind's blown. Like, how the fuck did you do that? That's impossible. You're doing the exact same thing that everybody else is doing. Well, they've spent time actually fencing.
Well, and that's the invisible details that come along,
What?
like trap and roll, like you said, trap and roll, like, those are the basic mechanics, but you can refine so much of that. And ironically, that's part of what ended up landing me there in Bothell, was watching Matt Thornton from SBG. He was talking about posture and connection. Of course, that's kind of his theme song. But he was demonstrating it on trap and roll, and just the little details of, shortening one side, and it's not a bridge, but rather you're rolling over your shoulder so you get your head, all those little details, which is essentially, it's what Hickson was doing 40 years ago.
Mhm.
But to go from the white belt, okay, block one side, get the arm, get the leg, bridge, and go, to then refine it down to where it's useful, where you can actually use it in a role. To me, those are the details that I never got the blue belt blues, but I definitely got a little stagnant, and that was something that kind of got me out of that. Like the understanding that the things you already know, if you just learn the details of those without learning any more moves, then the game improves and you have more fun and just go from there. So,
yeah, for sure. I think that there should be a strong emphasis whenever you feel right in your teaching, that whatever works, that's how you should teach it. I think that like if you don't know better, that's one thing. But if you did, now let's say that you're teaching a bunch of beginners, that really have never seen a trap and roll before, showing them the mechanics of how it actually works live, I feel is more important than showing it to somebody who already knows most of it and then they just pick up a detail here and there. I think it's more important that, like, if you showed, we're just taking the trap and roll, but like if you show somebody the right way the first time and you're showing them the high level details and the battles that actually need to be won, and that it's not one move, you're showing like 8 moves and each one of them matters and this is why. I think that that's more important for people's understanding and just having a much clearer understanding of like where they're supposed to go and where they're at in the fight, instead of like, I tried to trap and roll and it didn't work. I don't like that mindset. I tried
Right.
this one very big mechanical 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, to get out, and it didn't work. So like my boss, he says something all the time and it sticks with me because I do jujitsu, right? And he says it's a different thing to memorize something than understanding it.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then there's so much truth to that in jujitsu that, just because you understand the firing sequence of the move, that doesn't mean that you know where you're at in the fight while you're doing it.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's my 2 cents on it.
That makes sense. And obviously taking into context, like you said, if somebody's brand new, I mean, there's kind of you don't want to hit them with the fire hose of information, but right. once you get the general concept, then don't develop bad habits. Like start with the good details and understand why they're there, so it'll make sense when you actually need it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Brian actually, oh, my bad. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Shawn. You got it.
Oh, what I was going to say is that Brian actually does this very well. What he does is he shows the move, right? And doesn't explain shit.
Yeah.
He just lets you take a snapshot of what it looks like, right? And then he goes over kind of like the medium stuff, right? And kind of does like a check of the room to see where everybody's eyes are, if they're engaged or not. He gauges the room like a stand-up comedian, right? And then he goes back again, and then if everybody's with it, he's going to show like the deeper details of the move. And that's actually something that he broke down for me a few different times, because I wasn't good at doing that, is reading the room. I just start going on tangents. So
your explanation of the little details. That's actually, I think, one of the reasons I like doing jujitsu with you, and why I think we get along, is because I'm very similar. What keeps me engaged in jujitsu is the minutia, like the tiny little bits. Like there's always something for me to do and learn, and I never get bored with it. And I've mentioned this. I think I mentioned this when Brian was on, and I know Dan and I've talked to Dan about it before, but I actually don't understand how people get bored with jujitsu. The concept actually baffles. I remember I think you were actually the first person to tell me. It was either you or Trino. One of you told me about the blue belt blues, about how I think it might've been Trino. And I was like, I don't understand like why anyone would ever get bored with this. Like, I could do a trap and roll every day for 10 years and still get better at it. And it's like the simplest move, it's just like a day one move you learn, but there's so many small things to it that I will never not be engaged by where the hip needs to be and why. And there's this video of Hero and Gracie. He's at a camp with a bunch of like military guys or cops or whatever. And the whole premise is like a 20-minute video, I think. he basically is showing the trap and roll, and he has anyone who wants to can sit on top of him, and their whole goal is to not get trap and rolled.
Yeah, and if you watch that video, it's like 40 out of the 42 people that he rolled with, he trapped the foot first, but he teaches it trapping the arm first.
Yeah, but the crazy thing,
interesting.
But the crazy thing to me is, like, I've seen that video 4 dozen times. And I'm like, not even joking. I probably watched it 50 times, because every time I watch it, I slow it down to like quarter speed and like just watch his hip movement, and I'll see him move the body a little bit to the side before the guy even notices. And then, there's like those tiny little details where I'm like, okay, he's baiting the guy by moving his body, or he knows that he pushes the guy with a hand for no other reason but just to get a reaction, and then he goes. And but yeah, it's the little details like that just I don't get how people get bored or checked out. Like it makes no sense to me because of that.
Yeah, not everybody has a super curious mind. That's one of those things.
You talk about falling in love with jiu-jitsu. I think that's part of it. Is it's like I'm hooked by that. Like that's how my mind works. It ticks that way. And so every time I'm learning something new, it's like I'm going to do this badly for a really long time until I figure it out. Don't even care if I can't do it.
The people that you meet are definitely a different type of breed too. Like you brought up Trino. Trino is like one of the biggest hearted people I've ever met. I mean, Trino is amazing. I love that guy. And I actually owe a lot of my game to him. So, I mean, he opened me up to the whole head and arm game. And on top of it, it kept me so open-minded to not being so like driven to, whatever the curriculum is, but, it's okay to like freely think and ask questions, why are things this way? Can we rearrange this a little bit different? That type of thinking in jiu-jitsu, I mean, he did a lot for me in that area. Like, not a lot of people talk about Trino for some reason actually at the gym, but like Trino is legit, and he's actually a very good teacher. So like, I don't know why his name is not like you got a seasoned black belt in there and like nobody even brings him up. It's really weird to me. I don't like that. I'll definitely say that. But like
he's like my hidden secret. I don't tell anyone about him. So I whenever he has classes, I'm the only one who goes and learns from him. That's how I want it.
That's private.
Exactly. That's how I like that. I actually liked that when we had our open mat before classes on Fridays. I used to wish more people would show up, but it was always nice when it was just you and I, Shawn, because you could just show me all this stuff and no one bothered us. And I gotta learn so much more.
Yeah,
that's my selfish take.
No, it was good. It was good for me too, because I look forward to that time, because I got to just, drill stuff that I wanted to work on. That's the cool part about teaching class. Is like, if you don't want to teach something, you don't have to. Like, you could teach whatever you're interested in on that given day. And it can, just be, man, I just love trap and rolls today for some reason. I was just like, oh man, all right, cool, let's do that.
I actually do like trap and rolls. They're one of my favorite things to do. So I love trying to figure that one out. But
trap and rolls are good fun, man.
Yeah. Also because I'm bad at elbow escapes, and so
everybody's bad at elbow escapes.
But all right, boys. Well, we are hitting 2 hours.
Oh, man.
Cool. Right? Time flies.
Yeah, it does. Time flies when you're having fun, I suppose.
Yeah.
Silence.
Well, on that note, I think we should probably wrap this up. I'm hungry.
Okay. Nobody wants to upset your tummy?
Yeah, exactly. I do want to thank you for coming onto the podcast, Shawn. I'd like to have you on again. I'm sure Dan would as well.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, guys. I actually had a lot of fun. It's been great seeing you guys. It's been way too long, and I can't wait for the shit to get over.
No, me too. And, we'll do this again soon. I got through about half the questions that I had written, so there's more. There's
he's a note taker.
There's more embarrassing ones. There's ones that probably would make you look good, but I didn't ask any of those today.
No, you didn't. It's gonna be a lot of. They're gonna be coming after me today, but it's gonna be bad.
Well, let's chat about those questions offline, huh? Let's be nice to Shawn.
I thought they were pleasantly nice questions. I didn't see what the problem was.
That was good. Shawn's a good guy.
They were some of my favorite memories of you.
All
All right,
right. Well, I
boys.
think we're getting punchy.
Yeah, we
Let's
are
go ahead and
all
call
ready.
it.
We'll go ahead and give it a call. So everyone, this is episode 13 of the Beyond Red and Blue podcast. We have Shawn Carter on today. Thank you very much, Shawn, for coming on. Everyone, thanks for listening. Have a good rest of the night, the morning, or the afternoon.
Bye, everybody.